I originally made this for Halloween, but you can be a demon anytime. Hi there, welcome to my channel and happy Pride Month. I'm Jana June and I like to make stuff. Today I'm going to be showing you my process of making my blue demon costume, which includes a corset, trousers, and painting wings and horns. Was going for something that was sort of like 40s, 50s glamour inspired. Burlesque costumes were also sort of part of the style inspiration. And initially I wanted to do one of those bonnets with horns, but over time I kind of adjusted my design. I decided to go with a pale blue color instead of red, mostly because I'm kind of obsessed with the color right now, and I thought it would be a fun play on Devil in a Blue Dress. I'll be using the tulip midbust corset by, I think it's pronounced Aranea Black, but she doesn't post her patterns publicly anymore. I think if you search her name, there's someone that saved a bunch of them on a Google Drive somewhere, but I have them saved from years ago. I'm also using the Nasrin pants free pattern from Mood. Without further ado, let's get started. Starting with the trousers, I extended the rise by about 1¼ inches based on my measurements. I cut a straight line under the bottom of the pocket, but before the curve of the fly to make sure that the alteration goes smoothly. I did this to the front and back pieces and made my mock-up. Here is the trouser pant mock-up. I made the 16-18 size, and it's probably good I didn't go down because I don't think it would have fit well over the hips if I had. But it is too big in the waist by probably about 2 inches. So what I'm going to do is pin center back. Since I have a center back seam, going to be the easiest place for me to take that alteration. So I'm going to pin out the excess at the top, and I'm going to put a pin to the spot where I want to stop taking it in, meaning I'm going to make it smaller up at the top section, but there's going to be a point where I meet up with the current seam allowance where I don't want to change that. Going to put a pin at that spot, so basically I'll change the shape by that amount of slope. So I basically felt around until I kind of felt the spot where it feels like it's no longer excess. So I'd put the pin there so that when I take them off, I'll be able to change my line by that amount. So you just want to double check that that is going to fit comfortably, right, and sitting at the right spot on the body, that I don't need to make any more adjustments. So I'm glad I made the adjustment for height because it is sitting at my true waist. Love when that works out. The other thing I want to fix is, so I added length to the pocket because I wanted it to be a little deeper, which I'm glad I did, but when I put them in, it cuts off right here. So I kind of want to make the pocket bigger this way, just so it feels more comfortable when I try to use it. They do just fit my phone so that it's not like super obvious. Kind of want it to come over like at least an inch, so I'll probably have to add 2 inches to the whole piece so that it doubles over and adds an inch here. And the last thing to adjust, which is hard for me to record, is that they might be a little bit looser than I want, right? Like, I don't know. I'm going to try the corset top on with it first and decide if I feel like I want them to be a little bit slimmer of a cut. But if so, what I'm going to do is I'll probably start from like under where the pocket is so I don't have to worry about those adjustments. And also because I think I have a decent amount of space here and I don't want to lose that. But from under the pocket down, I can pin the side seams and pin out how much I need to get a slimmer leg. And here's how they fit after taking in the waist. They look a lot better, but I decided to shorten the rise by 1/4 inch because they felt a bit too long, like there was just a little too much fabric there. I'm transferring my adjustments to my pattern before cutting my fashion fabric. I had to take the waist in by 2¼ inches on each side, so I split that amount between the center back seam and the side back darts. That way the darts wouldn't be going in at an angle. I took just over an inch out of the center back and just over a 1/2 inch on both sides of the dart legs. I then took out the excess from my rise by drawing in my new line, cutting the pattern, and gluing it back together along my new line. After that, I drew in my new center back rise angle. Next is slimming down the legs. I measured the distance taken in on my mock-up and made markings periodically along the pattern. Then I used my curved ruler to make a nice sloped line. I also had to take out 2¼ inch from the center back of my waistband piece to make it match my actual pant leg pieces, and make the pocket bigger. I cut the pocket pattern along the fold line, added 4 inches of paper in between, which will make the pocket 2 inches deeper. I drew in a new fold line in the middle, and then continued the curve from the original pattern piece. And finally, I can cut out my fashion fabric. On the back pieces, I serged the side seams, rise, and inseam. For the front, I only serged the rise and the inseam for now. The side will be finished later after the pocket is attached. I matched up the notches for my front pleat, folded my fabric, and then basted this pleat into place. I also sewed in my darts by starting at the edge and coming to a point at the fold, using my thread tails to tie a knot at the end. This is what those look like when stitched into place, and now I can move on to attaching my pocket. I stitched it on right sides together along the side seam edge. Press the pocket open with the seam allowance toward the pocket, then understitch the pocket to the seam allowance. This helps keep the inner pocket pieces from rolling out. You can now fold and press the pocket into place. I sewed the bottom edge of the pocket closed, then serged the entire seam, which is now complete with the pocket. This is the front, the back pieces, right sides together. What I'm gonna do first is just sew the inseam, both of these together. And then after I do that, I'll press them open flat. I'm going to stitch the rise. Yeah. So this is the front and this is the back. They're attached at the inseam. I'm going to lay them right sides together, and I'm going to stitch the entire rise, stopping here under where the flat. So we're going to stitch on. Here, stopped my stitch here, straight up. I'm going to go ahead and base this in place here so that it is there for while I stitch the zipper in. I have my fly basted in right here, and I'm going to be putting my zipper face down. And since I want to be able to zip it up from my right side, I'm starting on the right side. So what you want is for the edge of the zipper tape to be aligned on the edge over here. The zipper stop should be 3/4 of an inch from the edge. The zipper's face down. If it's positioned correctly, it should have the zipper teeth starting about 1/2 inch from the center front seam. So I'm going to pin this and then stitch this down just to the fly extension. I'm going to stitch it with my zipper foot just on the far edge right next to my zipper teeth. Now that I have stitched along this edge, I'm going to turn this whole piece like this, and I'm going to top stitch here along the edge of the zipper to keep this flat and in place. This is sewn in and top stitched down, looking all pretty. From here, I need to lay this down on this side. So I'm going to lay it naturally where it wants to fold. So I'm folding it on the seam here. And what that means is that the zipper is now a bit to the left of that center seam, and I'm going to stitch down right next to the zipper teeth, and then I'm going to do another row of stitching at the edge of the zipper tape just to keep it down flat. So I'm not laying it so that it's meeting at that seam. I'm laying it where it naturally wants to sit after the seam that I already made on the zipper. There'll be a little bit of space on this side as well as a little bit of space on this side. I've stitched it on this side with a top stitch, and then on this side I stitched it right next to the teeth as well as on the edge of the zipper tape which is easier to see from this side. So this is my basting stitch from earlier, but these are the 2 stitches that I did on the side of my zip. So my last step before I undo my basting is that I need to flip this whole thing around, and I need to top stitch my fly down. You can kind of get a sense of where you want it to be by looking at the inside, right? I'm basically going to be following this shape, but I need to be careful not to catch my zipper stop. And so I'm going to kind of follow this shape, but I want to do it from the front so that I make sure that my stitching looks really clean and pretty from the front. So I'm going to pin this down about a 1/2 inch in, and then I need to be careful around this area where I go around the zipper stop. And then I'm going to go all the way to the edge where my center front seam is, so that from the front, it'll have that classic shape. Then I can open this up and I'll have a working fly. This pattern didn't come with a zipper shield, so I decided to make one. I put my pattern paper on top of the fly to trace the curve and drew a straight line on the other side to get the shape. I then added seam allowance only to the curved edge because I'll be serging the other side instead of fully closing it. I cut out 2 pieces from this pattern out of the blue fabric and added lightweight interfacing to one side. Putting them right sides together, I sewed along the curved edge, cut down the seam allowance, turned it out, and serged the straight edge closed. Next, I sewed the shield to the fly extension inside the seam allowance. I also did a small reinforcement at the bottom of the fly. This is called a bar tack. At this point I can seam rip open my basting stitch and I now have a working fly zipper. Next, I line up the front and back pant pieces and sew up the side seams. Moving on to the waistband, I cut out 2 of the shorter pieces and 2 of the longer pieces. One set has interfacing piece to it and they get sewn together at the center back seam. Then both long strips are sewn together at the top, and I understitched to the side without interfacing. Lining up the center back seam, match up the side with interfacing to the waistband of the pants, right sides together, and stitch. Sew the short ends together as well, just to the edge of the zipper. I did make a mistake here and not leave enough extension to cover my zipper shield, but I'm the one who tried to finish this the week before my trip. Anyway, flip the waistband over and pin in place along the inside of the pants. I did an edge stitch to close the finished waistband. You could also do this by hand for a really clean finish or do a stitch in the ditch. Edge stitch can look pretty nice and is faster and easier, so. Other than adding a hook and hemming, the pants are done, and I'll save the reveal for the end. Moving on to the corset. I traced the details of the pattern pieces onto my cotton duck fabric after making basic pattern adjustments. For this one, I think I started by shortening the torso only like 1/4 inch. I cut a strip of boning for each piece and flattened them with my iron. I sewed the boning in the center of each pattern piece. Usually I'd remove the boning to do this, but this boning has an additional layer of stability with this thread casing, and it's pretty much impossible to put back into the casing, so I decided to use my zipper foot to stitch them into place. I then put all the pieces together by matching up notches, and it's time for the first fitting. So this is where I'm at with the corset. I'm wearing it how I intend to wear it, which is just over the pants, and the plan is to wear this sheer top underneath don't think I want to not have something just because this is going to fit very close here and I just don't want to have anything peek out. So it's kind of sitting off like this. So I need to take in along these seams to have it shape better across my bust. And again, I'm also kind of looking for the point where I'm not having it get smaller or change so that I know where to make my adjustments and what to slope out. See that right there's already fitting a lot more closely. I need to take out a little bit here. So this is where I'm going to be making the lines to change the shape of these pattern pieces so that it will fit across my bust better. But then the big thing down here is that I kind of need to take in, you know, it's kind of moving away from my body here, but you want it to pull up against you. I think I'm going to bring this to a true point instead of having it flat right here. I think that'll kind of go with the whole look I'm going for. Essentially just kind of sloping this to a point here and then making the same thing on the other side. Take this in right here to help keep this against my body. I'm trying not to take out so much at this one spot because this needs to be spread out amongst different spots, right? Like I'm gonna take it in on both sides to make sure that I'm not pushing it all here and then everything's kind of going to the side. That's already better. I feel like these are kind of pushing out a little more than I want them to. If it's turned down to where it would be right now, it would be like this. What do we think? Is that kind of cute? What do we think? Is it actually cute for it to be really low like that? I feel like it's on the edge of too risque, but the shirt stops that from being a problem. I think I'm gonna keep the line. I think it kind of feels right, and luckily I have a smaller bust. I think it actually works out. Haha, less work for me. Back to the bottom. I feel like it's here and here that I need to take some. It's kind of like all the way around. That's annoying. This fit is definitely better. To take this in more than I expected. Maybe I should have gone a size down. So this side is the side I made most of my pins to. Obviously I did some pinning on this side just to make sure I wasn't like way off, putting a little star right here so I don't get confused when I take it off since it's on inside out. I don't want to not remember what I did. I'm hoping I can make adjustments to this piece, test it, then transfer them to the pattern pieces without having to take it apart, which might be wishful thinking. I don't have a lot of time and I don't really want to undo and redo all of this. So I'm going to try and get away with using this as my inner layer and just making the adjustments to the pattern so I can recut the outer and the lining and line them all up. Because your girl's got a lot of accessories to work on. Here's how the corset and everything is looking together after adjustments to the mock-ups. I decided I didn't love the shape of the corset with the pants, so I'm completely chopping off the bottom. I left the point in front and I trimmed the rest to hit at my waistline. I transferred these changes to my pattern pieces, utilizing my curved rulers to help clean the lines up. I am going to point out here that I really should have recut my inner stability layer and utilized it to be attached to my outer layer so that they are one. I did not do that because of time. I regret it. Do as I say, not as I do. And I cut out my fashion fabric as well as lining fabric and added boning channels on either side of each seam of the corset, in which I'll be using zip ties. sewed all of the layers together at the top and bottom and one side to leave one side open to turn it out. I do not recommend this. It was way too thick and awkward and difficult, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work out. What I should have done was make bias tape and stitch it around the edges. I will not be doing this the same way again. The last step is adding grommets to the back, which my wonderful fiance did for me while I moved on to the accessories. I got these horns on sale at Goodwill and the wings on Amazon. The first step is giving them the same base blue layer with this spray paint. I mixed black, gray, and blue to paint my dark first layer and wiped away the excess with a paper towel. This added a lot of depth and shadows and dulled down the shade of blue to be a lot closer to my fabric color. I then used silver metallic for the high points with a dry brush technique.
It's pretty cool to look at the difference between the original color and how it now looks.
345 million years later.
Me working on costumes.
And now it's time for the reveal. Alright, that was a lot. Tell me how you think it turned out. I think it turned out pretty cool, but it certainly hasn't reached the point that I envisioned when I first came up with the idea. The fabric I chose just didn't lay the way I had hoped for the pants. I think ultimately I had originally thought they would be less fitted pants, but seeing it come together, they needed to be more fitted, and in order for that to happen, I needed a stretch fabric, which I didn't get, so all of those things are just part of the process when you're coming up with something and trying it out. The corset is also very much a draft, especially with the last minute chop I made to the bottom. I am happy with how that turned out in terms of the overall look is better. I don't think that the fitted all the way down made sense on my body when I was trying to put it together. I was really on a time crunch with this one, so I wasn't really making the best choices. I've already noted how the way I put the corset together didn't make any sense. Like, I don't know why I thought I'd be able to turn that out. But ultimately, like, the idea of the process made sense. It's just the fact that the satin was not stable enough to hold its own shape, so it really needed either interfacing or to be constructed differently to hold the shape better. I think I managed to salvage it, and it's still something that I can wear and have worn, but it's certainly not perfect. I think I'll try a version with more bust coverage and maybe even have it come up to like a point above the bust. I think that'd be really cute. Or something like less sweetheart and maybe more like scoop and point at the ends. I think that'd be cute. I'll probably do like a 2.0 version of the whole look with design edits and definitely rhinestones. I think it really just needs like a lot of sparkle to bring it over the top after I work on the fit and design elements and getting all the shapes right. Anyway, this was a beast to make and even more work to edit, so I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even learned something. If you did, please like and subscribe and let me know if there's anything specific you'd like to see. If you want to see what I'm up to in between videos, feel free to follow me over on Instagram at jana.june, and I think that's it. I'm Jana June, and I'll see you soon.